I'm pretty good at saying yes. After work drinks? Sure. Be on site to run this event? Of course. Host a new video series so the producer doesn't have to be on camera. Why not? We've been taught that society rewards people who say yes. The people who jump on every opportunity, the ones who pitch in when the going gets tough, even at the cost of their own mental health or work-life balance. But saying yes isn't always the best option, particularly for folks who are managing other people. Should you say yes to that new pet project from the CEO that's potentially going to burn out your already stretched team? How about to the client who really wants to take the brief in a new direction, even though your gut and your team are screaming that you're already on the right path? Or do you often say yes to meetings you know you don't need to attend, which cuts into your precious working hours? More often than not, a negative response is the right one. So saying no is actually a pretty important skill for managers to have. You have to understand when to push back and how to do so in a way that doesn't burn you with your bosses, or burn your bosses with their bosses, or burn your employee with your bosses, or, well, you get the point. So how do you know when to say no? What can you say to politely let your boss down? And what should you do when you can't say no to something you know you should? This is Manage This, a series for everyone playing manager in the middle. I'm Mandy Gosling, and on each episode, we'll help managers tackle everyday problems that seem to pop up, both when you're leading a team and being managed in return. This episode is How to Say No Like a Pro. I chatted with Nancy Vonk, the co-founder of Swim, a leadership consultancy for creative companies like ad agencies and marketing firms. She's also the co-author of the book, Darlin', You Can't Do Both, and she's a strong believer in the power of no matter what position you're in.
There is so much to be lost by saying the yes that should have been a no. This is just a massive problem in the workplace. We all are inclined to it. Women are especially brought up to be pleasers, still are. We take big penalties that can include limiting our own careers by being accommodating when we shouldn't be, by not being honest when we should have been. When you're saying yes too much, there's just a very long list of things that can be going wrong. First of all, when you don't believe you should, you're kind of dying inside. Like this becomes, you end up hating your job. Meanwhile, you can be commanding less and less respect. If you start to be that person that's seen as a yes person, that's a bad place to be in. You absolutely can be setting yourself up for burnout. And ultimately, the yes that should have been no can mean just poor results, like the work is poor. Taking yes all the way to mediocrity with some regularity. This is hurting you most definitely in your career. It's hurting your team, hurting your company. And meanwhile, back at the beginning when the yes came out, you're thinking, well, this is the right attitude. This is what I should do. Everybody's going to be happy with me for this.
So why do we do it? Why do we say yes when we know in our hearts that we really don't think it's the right path forward?
I think the most foundational reason that we struggle to say no is that we're human beings, and humans hate conflict. It's like we're going to avoid it if we possibly can. And we're afraid we could alienate the person who wants the yes. We are afraid we could get in trouble. We're afraid we could be seen as not a team player, not reliable, just don't have the right stuff. Many of us will say yes because we don't want somebody to not like us.
It can be even more problematic for managers. Your yes might mean too much work for your team, and it can also erode their trust.
The manager needs to bear in mind the whole group is going to be affected by their decision to either challenge direction they think is wrong or not. They are risking things like losing the loyalty of their team when they don't say no, for instance, to the project that could land in their laps that they feel they cannot manage. You could be Also seen as a weak leader by your people. If you're saying yes to something that they know that the company's values are actually in conflict with the thing they're now being asked to do.
Okay, so you know you need to say no. You've psyched yourself up, so why does a yes still come out, and what can you do about it?
I am going to suggest outrageously that there's no one that couldn't decide reasonably at any level that they will voice honestly their problem with the direction from however high up you want to go. And the world would be a better place. I had an intern once, and what he did, thoughtfully, earnestly, and in complete ignorance that he was in no position to challenge me, he said, I'm really, I've been trying to get somewhere good on this, and I have nothing. And I think it is because the brief is a bad brief. And he pointed out flaws in the brief. He's absolutely right. So I had to get over as the boss. Who are you to see this? Now, what's going on here, young man? I didn't say that out loud. That was maybe my inside voice for a few moments. But he was right. He was right. And so because I recognized that, and because he was respectful, he wasn't like being some kind of bratty little jerk. I could hear him, and he led straight to reconsideration of the strategy and to way better work happening. And I got a great lesson as the boss that I would do well to make people feel they should always tell me if they disagreed with whatever. I didn't care what it was. My door is open.
For Nancy, it's really important that people give themselves permission to say no, to put aside that fear. So that's the unofficial step one. No, you can say no. Next, she says it's important that people hit pause before answering any requests.
You absolutely say yes as a default in a thoughtless way. Hit pause. Don't say the yes that maybe you are too inclined to just go ahead and, yeah, sure.
Then you have to ask yourself two questions. First, what's the absolute worst thing that'll happen if you say no?
Go beyond the immediate moment of they'll be mad. The catastrophic thinking that often happens initially when you ponder that question. I'll get fired. Well, really? Will you? Get past that fear moment and think of the long run.
If you say no to that project, direction, meeting, whatever, what are the actual consequences long term? Think it through and map it out. Then ask yourself, what's the absolute worst thing that happens if you say yes? An excellent question, and one we don't often consider. If you take on that extra workload, can you meet those deadlines? If you agree to take the project in a new direction, what happens if it fails? Be honest and be realistic. Next comes the hard part, the no. And okay, it can't just be, hey, Mandy, can you do this big project for me that's super important to the company? No, Bob. Okay, bye. That's not going to work. Nancy says we often fall into this trap where we don't think enough about how to frame our no for leaders, which helps them accept it as an answer and can address a lot of your concerns about saying it in the first place.
You need to think about what is your story for the leader above you. What's your story on that boundary? It's not enough to just say, I don't think we should do this and I'm not going to. For sure not. Well, why are you concerned? Why do you need to declare this boundary? Detail is often missing there that would really help you persuade a leader that you're right. I sometimes think about it as, what's the story you could tell them that would actually keep them up at night if you do agree to what they said?
Don't be afraid to get clarification on why your boss thinks something is important. Are there factors you're not aware of? Are there other priorities that need consideration? Getting those might make you reconsider your answer. But it might also strengthen your conviction that saying no is the right answer.
The times that this is going to go the best and have the most successful results is when it's evident that you're saying this or doing this for the sake of others. It's not about you. It could be about the whole team. It could certainly be about the boss the boss will come out ahead if they pause to reconsider that direction that they've given. Well, I think that these are simple steps that can mean, at the worst, you've shown up behaving like someone who's concerned about getting to the best possible outcome. And you don't risk looking like you're not a team player, you have a bad attitude when you've presented yourself this way and this thoughtfully.
Next comes the actual words. And while Nancy says there are no magic words that'll lessen the fear of saying no, she has a couple phrases you can test out.
Here's why I'm so concerned about doing this. Sometimes you're going to tell them what you're seeing that they haven't even thought of. That, again, the boss has a million things on their mind. Believe me, there are times when we all think they're so out to lunch. Like, what have they been smoking? Like, what? But in fact, a lot of times a request just has not been examined closely by the boss. Paint the picture of the consequences you're concerned about in some detail. You want them to feel something about what you're saying.
Okay, she does have one magical phrase.
I think another magic words are, I need your help. I think this is a dilemma, and I would love to talk to you about how you see navigating what I'm fearful about happening if we go this direction.
The key is painting yourself not as the problem, but that you've got the interest of your team, of your boss, your company in mind. Your no's aren't because you're lazy and don't want to do the work. They're because you feel like it's important to pause and really consider whatever the request is. The next step is to practice. You probably don't need practice saying no to a meeting you really don't feel is a good use of your time. Though who knows, maybe you do. But for really important refusals, Nancy suggests finding a buddy, someone outside your organization with whom you can practice your spiel.
Do that for a pitch. In advertising, we do that for an important meeting like that. This could be really important. And it's worth that kind of thoughtfulness.
So, what if your boss refuses to take no for an answer? First, make sure that your boss really understands all the relevant information.
You know what? The boss doesn't know nearly as much as you think they do. They've got their own to-do list a mile long. They're not perfect. You have to be your own advocate.
If you and your team are overworked and simply cannot take on another project, give your boss the data. Be transparent about how much time you guys are actually spending on certain priorities and where other work might be suffering.
Most employees don't want to be fully transparent with the boss. They think if they say the truth, that they're perhaps overwhelmed. They feel like we're not able to do as much as they're being asked for. They're going to be seen as weak. Maybe they're going to lose their jobs.
And if your boss is still not taking no for an answer, it might actually be time you start considering a new job. You kind of know the signs.
So let's say you've done all that. You have brought to life all the challenges. They're not playing ball. They're not engaging in solutions. Then I'm saying maybe it's time to look somewhere else. But certainly if your health is being impacted, certainly if you are becoming attached more and more to mediocre results because you didn't have time to do it, for instance, didn't have time to do the job properly. When you're actively looking at penalties, negatives to you that can't justify staying in that job.
But she says it's important not to be discouraged.
I encourage middle managers to assume that their good, well-intended challenges will be received in the spirit intended.
If you can learn to say no, you're also teaching your team that they can say no to you. And that's not a bad thing at all.
I think modeling show up with your honest point of view when it's for the sake of success of others means that that's how people that work for you will feel they have been given permission to show up with you. And that is solid gold. That is the best.
So what are your tricks for saying no? Have you ever said yes and then regretted it? And what topics should we consider exploring in a future episode? Weigh in on the comments below and consider subscribing to this series, our whole YouTube channel, or the Rotman Insights Hub. Just click the link in the description to get more thought leadership and research-backed management tips from the Rotman community delivered to your inbox every other week. Thanks for watching.